Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Brad. What's going on, buddy?
Man, I'm fired up. It's another fired up day. I was fired up last week. I'm still fired up. I'm good, man. Some stuff went down today. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Tell me.
Doing pretty good. Been having a good week. Yeah, got to spend the weekend with the folks down here, so that was good. Good to see them. A lot of conversations about watching your old man and your mortality and kind of envisioning that. But that's probably a discussion for another time. Yeah, we were chatting a little bit before we hit record, and we were talking a little bit about how most of our topics are what I like to refer to as timeless versus timely, meaning that they span the breadth of time, and they aren't particularly honed in around one key thing that happens in history. But something caught our eye today on social media, and I wanted to talk about it because I think it brings up a bigger issue. So I'm just going to jump right into it here. Everyone who listens to this show for any amount of time knows that both you and I are part of the Iron Council, which is the private membership group in Ryan Mickler's Order of Man. And Ryan made a very open post today about what's been going on in his life, about how he was struggling with alcoholism and it has essentially cost him his marriage. And for the most part, he got a lot of support, except for, well, I won't say except for, but one of the non-supportive people was Sean Whalen, the guy behind The Lion's Den and Lions Not Cheap. And the way he went about it, to me, was just completely wrong. For those that don't know, Sean is somebody that Ryan on multiple occasions has mentioned to be one of his mentors. So it's a guy that Ryan, has spent time with, has learned from, and values his opinion. He really kind of tore Ryan up in a way that was unproductive. And I think that's what I want to talk about, right? Is you can disagree with a guy, you can not like what happened to him or what he did, but the way you address somebody, especially in a public setting, and especially as a public figure, he, being Sean, went about it the completely wrong way. And it brought up the idea to me of being in a glass house and throwing stones, right? We all have our imperfections. So if somebody starts talking about one of their imperfections and all you do is just pile on and kick the guy when it's down, I mean, you're just throwing stones in your glass house. We all have warts. We all have, it's the nature of being human that we are imperfect. So the moment somebody admits one of their imperfections and starts talking about it and starts talking about how they're working towards bettering themselves in that aspect, and just to kick the man when he's down, what value does that bring? So I kind of wanted to talk about that topic at large and, just kind of address the thing that happened that kind of wanted me to get to talking about it. So just curious about your thoughts in general. We don't necessarily have to talk about the whole Instagram post with Ryan because it was more just the catalyst for the conversation. But I want to get your thoughts on this whole topic.
Man, this is a very charged topic. Right? It's very easy to look at somebody, a public figure, a semi-public figure, somebody somebody who you think has it all figured out, and then they failed. And there are people out there, trolls, who want to celebrate that. They want to celebrate somebody else's downfall. Say, look, I told you that this guy was full of shit. He wasn't the guy that we all thought that he was. And what good does that serve? You look at Ryan's situation, for example, and here's a man who he made bad decisions. 100%. The first person to admit that be Ryan Mickler himself. He'll tell you he messed up. He'll tell you he made bad decisions, and ultimately those decisions cost him his marriage. But at the same time, what has he done since that moment of recognition? He has owned it, first and foremost, and he's setting out on a path to correct that. And how ridiculous is it that anyone among us, I'm drawn to the example of Jesus Christ when he talks about the adulterer. And he says, who among you, the man among you without sin, can cast the first stone? I'm sure we could look at Sean Whalen's life and see all kinds of things. I look at my life and I can see all kinds of things. But I'll tell you what, the Brad from 2 years ago, the Brad from 3 years ago, the Brad from 6 months ago is not who I am. I am the man that I am in this moment and this moment onward moving forward. And that's something that I know in my heart. Have I made mistakes? Can I look back at thousands of things that I did in my past and regret? Some of these things came to light. I would be embarrassed. Absolutely. But here's the thing. We're all like that. As men, none of us has lived a life of perfection. We've all done stupid shit. We've all made mistakes. We've all done things that we regret, that have hurt our families, that have hurt ourselves, that have hurt those around us. But who are we in any capacity to look at a man and say, oh, this guy's going through a divorce. This guy lost his wife that he'd been married to for 20 years. This guy's given up what he had. He's moved back across the country. I'm just going to kick him. And then I'm going to dunk on it and make a show. Just for likes. Just for the cred, if you will, on Instagram. Or in any setting. It shows a lack of emotional maturity. So I guess the question becomes, why do you think men, Dan, I think you probably have some good insight on this. Why do you think a guy feels so compelled to want to dunk on somebody? Why? What does he stand to gain? Like, what's the clout that he's looking to gain from this?
I mean, my first reaction is that it's an easy win for you. It's a way for you to one up somebody, regardless of the situation. Again, I want to kind of move away from this particular situation, talk about it at large, but it's the ability to one up somebody. It's the ability to create a superiority complex or to fester that superiority complex in you. And it's a way to try to build up your standing in the social circle that you're in. My opinion is guys don't get is it doesn't really do that, because the guys who really see what's going on, that you're kicking somebody when they're down and that you're just piling on, is you're the kind of guy who doesn't help the situation. There is no value brought to the situation by you throwing stones at somebody when they're down. The moment you identify a weakness in somebody, or somebody comes up and says, I have failed and this is how I failed, and you just pile on and beat and just and there's a difference between calling somebody out. If you did something wrong and I called you out on it, there's a difference between that and being like, hey, dude, you're not living up to who Brad is. And I say it with love, and I say it with caring, and I say it with respect. That is a lot different than just, dude, you're an asshole because you do X, Y, and Z. What value does that latter part bring? And what value, again, does it bring doing it in a public setting versus me pulling you aside one-on-one and being like, dude, you know I love you as a brother, but you're really fucking up in this part of life. How can we work together to get you back on track?
There are times you've got to shake the coconut tree if a guy is not doing what he needs to do and call him out on that. Hold his feet to the fire. There's a level of accountability. But that's what it boils down to is, what's your overall intent? What's your end goal when you're citing this? Is it to challenge somebody, to awaken them to their potential, to their capability so that they become better? Or take a second to self-reflect and say, yeah, Brad was right. Oh, Dan was right. Yeah, that might have been hard to hear, but they're trying to help me understand what I'm doing wrong so that I can fulfill my potential. Versus the guy who, honestly, when I look at it, the guy who are throwing stones in glass houses, the guys who are trying to dunk on somebody, the guys who are trying to one up and get social clout and all of that. We see it all the time. You see it all over Twitter. Twitter's an absolute cesspool. But what does it say about the man who does that? To me, it's suggesting an incredible amount of insecurity. If a guy were sure of himself, he would have no need to sit here and just kick a guy when he's down. He would have no need to say, oh man, that sucks. You're an asshole. You deserve it. Everything that you have in your life that's gone wrong is you deserve. That's a much different message. And that insecurity says a whole lot more about the accuser, the guy who's throwing those stones, than it does about the person who's trying to pick themselves up. And you look around, there are plenty of people in your life who've made mistakes and they're trying to pick themselves back up. By deciding and making this conscious decision that you want to pour some salt in the wound, especially if it's somebody you have a relationship with, what the hell does that say about you as a man? And this isn't just relating to Sean, this is in general. It's very easy to look around and see somebody that you know who's struggling. And rather than offer a hand up, you just kick them when they're down. You kick them in the teeth, curb stomp them. You go American History X on them for no purpose.
There's also a difference between seeing somebody who's in the process of failure, the process of getting off the tracks and pulling them back on and helping them get back on track, and then somebody else who has come to you and said, I have failed, and then beating on them for it. Because the latter one is, listen, it's done. It's happened. There's nothing that can be done to change the course of that work. It's only how do we help you move on and get better from this situation. Versus the former is, dude, you're going down a bad path and we need to be we're here to help you fix this so that you don't end up at destination X. So there's two different scenarios in my mind there. The latter one especially is there's no value brought by bagging on somebody at that point. There's no value in giving them a hard time. At that point, what's done is done. What's happened is happened. The results of their actions have manifested into whatever scenario it has occurred. And at this point, it's just, dude, that sucks. You fucked up. You own it or you don't. So first, let's get you to the point where you understand that you fucked up and you screwed up and you really just didn't do what was right. But let me help you get back on your feet now.
Yeah.
Let me help you move on. Let me help you figure out what's next.
It's kind of funny that this happened on the same day that I had a very interesting experience on my battle team within the Iron Council, interestingly enough. So I think I may have mentioned this before. I lead a team. There are 13 of us, and there's a guy on our team who just wasn't pulling his weight. Anytime we would try to hold him accountable or challenge him or call him out when he wasn't doing the things that he needed to do, he would tend to shut down and get incredibly angry. And it felt over time that he would get angrier and angrier and angrier. So he became more and more detached from the team. And we were pretty frustrated. And within the Iron Council, we put together these things, battle plans, essentially a 12-week plan that we're going to use in our personal lives to improve various quadrants, specifically calibration of our minds, condition of our bodies, connection with those around us that, important people around us, and contribution, how we're contributing to the world. The plan that he put together was something that he probably put together in 5 minutes and lacked any sort of ambition. And I told him, hey man, this is not going to cut it. This is not going to move the needle in your life the way that you need it to. Ultimately, I challenged him in a way to help him be better. He shut down. He got really upset. I didn't hear from him until today when he said, hey, I'm leaving the team. And he said he didn't want to get into details. He didn't want to talk about it, which I found frustrating. But rather than look at the guy and say, you're an idiot, what you're doing is stupid, you're not being successful, and I'll tell you what, some of those thoughts were jangling around that back in my head. I just decided, okay, that's your decision. I wish you well. I hope things work out for you in the end. And we moved on. And I didn't take that opportunity to take him and railroad him to those around me. I didn't dunk on him. I didn't feel inspired to, flex my social muscles and just rip on him to others. It was a decision that was made. I wasn't proud of him. He wasn't willing to do the work. But at the same time, what would I have stood to gain had I kicked him on the way out? What does that say about me as a man? What does that say about my character? What does that say about the person I'm trying to become? Were those thoughts in my head? Absolutely. Is it easy to want to just twist that knife on somebody? Of course. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, is that the kind of man that you want to be? One who finds joy and finds these subtle victories that are superficial by just lording something over somebody else.
I would argue that you even have more to lose than gain by doing that.
100%.
Right. You lose respect amongst them, especially as a leader. If you kick somebody like that on their way out or bag on them, it's the guys that you lead are going, am I next? What's he think of me? I'm not going to show weakness to him because he's just going to do the same thing to me. Whereas if you act kind of like you did, or even better, you look at him and you go, okay, well, this team isn't maybe for you, but let me help you find another one. The guys that you lead see that you both hold the line and are also concerned about them. My point being in this whole thing is that by having self-control and not just beating somebody when they're down, you lead by example and you show that empathy is a real thing. We can be standard bearers and still show empathy towards others, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Empathy is a difficult one. As men, we often think of empathy and we think of it as a feminine characteristic. It's very easy for a guy to not really consider empathy. But at the same time, it's as simple as putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. We've all been there. You look at Ryan Mickler's struggle with alcoholism. You look at any number of men's struggles with porn. You look at Andy Frisella sleeping on a stained mattress in the back of a store at some point. You look at my issues with my marriage. You look at Dan's issues with being ugly. Just kidding. But we all have things that we've struggled with at some point in our lives. And some of them have been absolutely terrible. It says a lot about you. I'm going to come back to something that I've talked about at various points in my life. And in various episodes in the past. It's embracing trying to be like Jesus Christ. This Christ-like demeanor, this Christ-like attributes, and living a life when you're trying to take his image in your countenance. If we want to live to be Christian men who have faith, who have a purpose, and who ultimately want to return to the presence of God, Christ exhibited empathy. He was somebody who didn't judge. He was somebody who accepted people as they were. Accepting people as they are does not mean condoning their actions. Right? Like this, let me be perfectly clear there. It's very important that we understand that somebody's going through something. If they continue to go through that, like Dan, for example, if I found out you had an issue with, let's just say, smoking pot, and you were hiding that from your family, and you never had any intention of sharing that with them, I would never allow you to continue on without letting you know, hey man, you're on a slippery slope. You're at the risk of losing everything that you hold dear. But that doesn't mean that I can't put myself in your shoes and start to understand your struggle and what you're trying to go through if you truly are focused on being better. That's the key component. And I think that that's what's so easily lost is when you're looking at empathy and understanding where people are coming from, most men want to be better. Most men are not content being mired in a lifetime of shit and terrible decisions and leading themselves astray. I would be doing you a disservice if I could not call you out on that. But at the same time, how am I actually able to truly put myself in a position where I can authentically want you to be better unless I try to put myself in your shoes, unless I try to relate to you and meet you on your level in some capacity? I'm not being a friend. I'm not being a brother in arms. I'm not being somebody in the trenches with you. If I can't make an effort to understand you at your level, meet you at your level, and try to inspire you on your level, if I'm going to lord above you or stand above you, not as an equal, but as an adversary, I'm not.
Yeah, and the point you're making is that meeting somebody on their level does not equal condoning the actions. You can meet somebody on that level and try to understand their reasoning behind it, understanding what's going on in their life, but that doesn't mean you condone your actions. If you were, I'm going to pick an example that I know is not happening, but if you were stepping out on your wife, I could have the conversations with you about what's going on. Why are you doing this? What's driving you to do this? All while still not condoning those actions. I would never support that, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't be there as a brother, as a friend, as a friend to try and help you in those situations. Even if those actions had resulted in the termination of your marriage, I can still be there to say, listen, I don't agree with what you did. It wasn't the right thing to do, but I want to help you as a man become a better man. So how do we help you move on from this situation?
How do we become better? How do you get there? Like, oftentimes, I think one thing that you and I have been, I don't want to say accused of, but something that we both do is we can ask very challenging questions. And we were going through an experience just last week with one of our really, really good buddies where we felt that he wasn't really doing what we thought he was capable of doing. Like there was something that felt like he was leaving it on the table. And you and I both challenged him on it. And
pretty hard.
We didn't make any excuses. We did not back down, but we simply did make sure we took the time to understand and help him understand where we were coming from. And it was very important for him to know why we're telling him that. Of course, he didn't like it. he really didn't like it. He got pretty frustrated at us for 24 hours. But after he took a second and thought about it, this is a guy we've known for years. He knows where we're coming from. He knows that we're in his corner. But we would be horrible friends, horrible brothers in arms if we would simply stand back and say, yeah, man, what you're doing here is going to move the needle. That's cool. If we didn't feel that or believe it. We challenge to inspire. We challenge to help make men better. We challenge because we care enough about somebody to ensure their success and do everything in our power to help them become successful. There was something that was said within the Iron Council a couple of months ago by somebody that was talking about toxic empathy and this concept of it's so easy for us to just stand back and allow somebody to run themselves into a ditch and root them on and cheer them on and be there supportive as we can be. That's toxic by nature because we're allowing that to happen. If If we truly love somebody enough and care about somebody enough, we're going to challenge them. We're going to kick them in the balls when they need it. Because ultimately, we know that the trajectory on their own, that they're on is not going to end well for them. So we have to be willing to tell them hard truths. And we do it because we care about them.
We had Ben Kerr on a few weeks ago, and I'm reminded of something that he said in that conversation. Was he used the term cuddle, not coddle. And that's really what it comes down to when you think about it, right? We're going to give these guys support. Our buddy that we were talking about, man, I want nothing more than just give him a big hug and be like, dude, we're going to get through this. But I'm not going to coddle him, and I'm not going to, sweet talk this thing. He needed to hear some hard things, and we had to deliver that. And that's going to cause people to sometimes get upset with you. He was upset. He was legitimately upset with us for a good 24 hours. But like you said, after a while, he came around and realized that we were giving it to him because we love him and because we care for him. And we weren't kicking him when he was down in a public setting. We were privately going to him and saying, hey, dude, this is not right. This is where we think you need to be or what you need to be doing. And let us help you get there.
And I'd make the argument that when the time comes to really challenge somebody, hold their feet to the fire, be selective in the group that you share that with.
Yes.
Instagram comments are not the place to do.
No.
They don't have to be a personal one-on-one conversation. I'm willing to challenge men in front of my battle team, a group of 13 men within the Iron Council. I'm willing to challenge Dan, for example, in some of the groups that we share in some of our groups.
But it's also important to point out that those groups are set up for that purpose.
Correct.
The battle teams in the Iron Council are set up to push men and to challenge men.
Correct.
It's not your local, drinking buddies at the bar on Friday night kind of group. It's a group that's designed for men to be part of to improve themselves. So it's the right environment for that kind of thing.
Correct. You were going exactly where I was going to go with that. You have to have the right environment. You have to understand, and it would be beneficial if the individuals in that environment, one, know the expectations, and two, have at least a decent relationship with the individual receiving that. You're not doing yourself any favors or doing anybody any service by publicly lambasting anybody.
So this is also where the idea of building your tribe and building your pack and really getting to know your guys becomes so important. Because when you get to know your guys on that really kind of deep level, that really tight level where you know almost everything about them and what makes them tick and how they take feedback. And, I know, for instance, that you take feedback different than our friend David and different than our friend Andy. And I know, for the most part, how to push each one of you guys the right way, much like you know how to push me the right way. But that's only because we've invested in each other and we've gotten to know each other at a more than superficial level or deeper than superficial level. We've really spent time together. We've gotten to know each other. We know all about each other, what makes each other tick, and we know how to push correctly. And that is so important to getting the end result. I know exactly how to push you. I know the right words to use, and I know what words or approaches I'll say, maybe not necessarily exact words, but I know what approaches are going to be detrimental to the end cause.
Yeah. You nailed it. You have to understand, it comes back to caring about somebody enough to want their success and their well-being. And as you build those relationships and as you surround yourself with like-minded men and as well, and you start to understand how they function, how they tick, what things they resonate with them versus what things don't. Obviously, I know when it comes to talking to you, oftentimes I'll lead off with questions to get you thinking, and you answer a lot of these things for yourself. You have a lot of situational self-awareness. Sometimes you just need a little nudge to get there, right? Whereas our buddy Cam, sometimes I need to have a little bit more of a blunt force approach. You know what I mean? That means that it takes some time. When you build a pack, when you build this tribe, when you build this group of men around you, take the time to get to know them. We talk about this a lot, But one of the nuances, and I think one of the secret formulas that's made our whole, like our band, our tribe work, is they're equal parts ball busting and taking things seriously. Like, we've built camaraderie, we've given each other a hard time, we've ribbed each other. So when you start to do that, that opens somebody up enough so that you can learn more about them. And as you start to learn more about somebody, you can start to peer into their soul just a little bit. You know that much more ably and capably how to actually speak to somebody. You know, if I were to come to you and just challenge you really, really hard, say, Dan, you need to do this, and Dan, you need to do that, I know that's not going to resonate with you. But I know it because I took the time to get to know you on a personal level, to bust your balls, to bust your chops, to call you Long Island Karen and all these random things I've called you over the years. Because that stuff matters.
It does. It absolutely does. And it's also important to know what's going on with you in your guys' lives. You know, if you've got something going on and you're screwing up, but you know your mom's in the hospital and things are rocky with the wife, and your daughter's screwing up in school, and you know your job is talking about layoffs, and you've got all this stress. I'm coming at you a lot different than I would if everything else in life was status quo and the same situation was there. I'm handling that differently because you have to know the stressors in those guys' lives and what's going on. So this is where building that pack and keeping that line of communication open is so important. I mean, we've got a group of 7 guys that are basically like brothers right now. And we were on a battle team in the Iron Council for a long time together. We've done a lot of stuff together, and we're all kind of spread out now. But each one of us still knows exactly what's going on in each other's lives, and we can all push independently or as a group on each other as needed. And that's because we keep that communication open, and we're constantly in contact with each other about all the bullshit in our lives. Good, bad, joking, important, whatever it is, you know, we're there. And that is the power of the pack, in the sense of you keep that going. And then when you have to have those important conversations, you can have them knowing that you've got all the information gathered together to be able to approach it the right way.
Man, couldn't say it any better. That's really what it's about. That's it, man. Like, it sounds like we've been kind of beating this message for the last year, but there's a reason why we continually come back to this and beat this message home. For a man to be successful in his life, he needs men around him that will inspire him and drive him to be better. Men that know him, that care about him on a personal level. Guys that know the nuances of what's going on. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When you have a group of men, there are certain things within your life that you've told nobody else, not even your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be very delicate in how I present that, because does my wife know all of my dirty laundry? Absolutely. She does. It took a lot longer for her to learn about it, but there are still certain feelings, thoughts, masculine tendencies that I'm trying to pursue that I can't readily talk to her about. I just can't. She's not going to understand them. But my guys will. I feel like you're going to challenge me on this.
No, what I was going to say is, and you hit on it right at the end there. It's, you can tell her all about those things, but there's things, because she's not a man, she's never going to understand. There are things that I tell my wife and she just looks at me, she goes, why does that matter? But then I tell you guys and you're all like, oh yeah. Like, yeah. We dig in because we all realize how important it is to us.
Yeah.
And that's just the beauty of the different sexes, is that there's things that are important to them that are absolutely not important to us. And there's things that are vitally important to us that mean nothing to them. And that's what makes it great. But that's also why you need your group of men, because there are going to be things in life that your wife just looks at you and goes, so? And you're like, you don't get it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is if there's something in your life that's deep within the recesses of your soul, you tell that to me. And then I see you living your life in a way that's not commensurate with that you're not on the trajectory you need to be to accomplish that or overcome that or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
You sure as hell better believe I'm going to challenge you and call you on that, because I'm not happy with the trajectory that you're on. And I want to make damn sure that you also recognize that I know that the men around you know that, so that you can stop BSing yourself and accept the fact that you also know that you're not on that same trajectory and start to do something.
Yep.
We're stubborn creatures. Men, we are so freaking stubborn. We oftentimes know when we're heading toward a ditch, but we're too damn stubborn to recognize it and start to do something about it. We need the men around us to be able to do that for us.
It's amazing how much we all sometimes fall into that concept of insanity, that Einstein said, or was it Einstein? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
I think it was.
We can easily get caught in that loop by ourselves, but it's actually very easy for our friends in our pack to look at us and be like, dude, what are you doing? You just keep doing the same stupid shit.
Yep. And the wild thing is you usually know that you are, right? You deep down inside on some subconscious level, you recognize that.
And a lot of times you keep doing it because doing the right thing is much harder, or you don't even know what the right thing is. You just know that
it's easy, or you don't even know where to begin to start getting it right. But I'll tell you what, you have men around you who are going to call you on that. You're that much more likely to try something different. Try new.
To kind of tie it back into that concept of not throwing stones that we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, all of these things that we're talking about involve not throwing stones, but rather bringing value to the situation. Bringing value and helping that person become a better person. Making that man a better man. Not taking a win over his loss or kicking him when he's down, but looking at him and being like, dude, you need a hand up. I'm not giving you a hand out. You're going to do the work, but I'm going to give you a hand up and we're going to do this together. We're going to work through the problem. And if you can't see the path, I'm going to help you find that path. That's what being a man is to me. It's not kicking somebody when they're down. It's not making fun of somebody. It's going, dude, yeah, you royally fucked everything up. And that's over. So let's dust you off and let's find the path forward that's going to work best for everyone.
Bring him to your level. Don't bury him.
All right. Well, I think that's a good one, Brad. Appreciate it. For all that, fellas, thank you guys for listening. We really do appreciate it. We're really enjoying some of these conversations lately, and we're looking forward to what we bring in the future. To that end, make sure you check us out on untamingmasculinity.com. You'll find show notes for this and all of our other episodes there, as well as links to our social media. Come check us out on Instagram and Facebook, and we've been posting all of our episodes on YouTube, so check that out as well. Make sure you're going to your podcast player and leaving us a rating and review. Those help us spread the word and get the word out to more guys. So definitely the ratings and the reviews, the combination there really helps us out. And finally, just make sure you keep coming back. Keep coming back. We're going to keep providing more great content as the weeks go on. And we really look forward to serving you men as the time goes on. So, Brad, thanks again, man. I enjoyed this podcast. And for all the guys out there, we will leave you with just one question. What are you doing to untame your masculinity?